Bob Brooks, and you are listening to this special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Tony Joe's in the studio with me just every Friday. You'll catch Tony Joe in the studio. And if you got a question for him, we've got a line open, 1-877-913-5357. Sorry about the opening. We had a little bit of a technology problem, but I think we got it fixed now, so we're in good shape. You know, Tony Joe, and you, of course, I knew when you walked in today, I said, I got something I want to talk about that you are way ahead of. Yeah, didn't you know that? Because that's the case. Talking about why electronic vehicles are causing a tire boom. And apparently, and I was unaware of this, but apparently the heavy weight of we'll say a Tesla, quick acceleration, those add up to EVs tend to burn through tires about 20% faster. And then they've got issues with dampening tire noise, which I would think you would probably, there's a lot of tire noise you probably don't hear because the noise of a regular car. But I got to think of a car that's got an electric vehicle that has that platform. It's very silent, so you're probably hearing every single noise possible. And then Michelin research shows tire selection can impact an electric vehicle's range by 10 to 15%. So I look at these, usually articles like this are full of at least a few facts and a few solutions. This was just very sketchy. Here's the data, and very general, which leads me to a conclusion that these are some things that you're just not going to correct.
Well, they may be correctable someday, but they're not now. Just
right.
Like battery technology, hopefully gets better, but at this point, you just can't do any better than we're doing at this time. But the thing about tires on EVs is they're heavy because of the weight of the battery makes the whole vehicle heavy, and this causes more stress on the tires. And when you've got to understand something about an EV that a lot of people might not understand, and that is if you have an electric motor versus an internal combustion engine. One is called an engine and one is called a motor, and a lot of people interchange the two. But for all intents and purposes, we need to understand when the motor, an electric motor, is engaged or power is applied to it, it has immediate torque available on demand. It just takes off with the twisting force that we think of as torque is right from 0 miles an hour. And an automobile engine, of course, has to go through a series of mechanical conversions, that is to say the transmission, and then the torque converter applies power slowly, and it doesn't really have its greatest amount of torque until it reaches a certain bandwidth. Now that goes for any electric car versus any internal combustion engine. So having that torque on demand allows you faster acceleration, and it allows you also to apply the force from the wheels through the tires onto the pavement in a much more stressful way. So that is going to wear the tires faster. And this is a problem not only with the torque applied at the wheels, but also the heavy weight due to the battery. And when you account for all these factors, the tires, one of the things about electric vehicles, it's a common complaint, is the tires don't last as long. And so, you think about tires are made of petroleum products, and you're going to go through more tires with an EV, and you're going to have oil to make tires. So I'm not sure that I am not a big proponent of EVs. I think everybody knows that. I'm not totally against them. I have nothing against hybrids, but EVs in general have built-in problems, issues that come to the surface after they're actually put out into the field for the public to drive, and a lot of things come up like that, Bob.
So, do you think you can create a tire that specifically for an EV that meets the longer range that comes along with it, and that it handles the dynamics a lot better?
Well, I probably so. My guess is yes, because everything that, problems that exist have to be remedied somehow. Now, let me just say, at this point, I don't know how to manufacture. I mean, I wouldn't have any idea how to manufacture a tire that's, quieter and that would last longer, but I can speak to what I do know about the tire issue, and that is the EV is quiet. You know that,
Right.
all right? Well, when you have a tire, a really, really good tire, one of the best in the business, one of the highest expensive tires money can buy, there's a lot of steel belts inside that tire. Now, that means that the tire is strong and that it takes a lot of abuse and it lasts a long time. However, steel belts alone create road noise. So if you have better tires, usually stronger and more steel belts, then you're going to have more road noise. There's no way of getting around that. So you would think a cheaper tire would be quieter, but it wouldn't last anywhere near as long as you would need it to. And so you've got these two opposite ends of the spectrum fighting each other. You want a quieter tire, a longer lasting tire, but no road noise. So it's going to be something that research is going to have to come up with, and I'm sure they're going to eventually. But right now, this is where we stand, and this is the issue we have at this point.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call, and Tony and Joe would love to hear from you if you've got a question and or a comment. 1-877-913-5357. So do you have any idea how many pounds a typical Tesla weighs? Is 5,000 way off?
No, 5,000 to 6,000 is about in the area that I understand they weigh.
Yeah, I wonder how what the cost is for tires and what you end up having to invest, how long they actually do last.
Well, I don't know that it's a whole lot different than any other tire or any other car that you have to buy tires for. The tires themselves are not necessarily different in so many ways. They are, the profile and the design is a little bit different, but as far as the tires, they're regular tires. I mean, they're what you would put on any other vehicle, except that the distance between the rim and the road, excuse me, or the profile is, my understanding has to be different simply to support the weight. But you will find out, Bob, that as the people have complaints like this, technology will evolve and they'll come up with a solution. But at what cost? For instance, my point is, if they do solve the problem, then how much is a set of tires going to cost for an EV on top of the already expensive price of the EV, the expensive price of replacing the battery, and all the things that go on the con side of having an EV? So, I mean, is it really that much better? I don't know. I do know that the public is not buying them up like people thought they would.
Yeah, I gotta think. You have on one side you've got what the government wants to see happen, and then you have the reality of people are going, I don't know that I really want to go this route. Because I think you've really, we've talked about this, when you're buying a car and you're trying to select what vehicle that you want, you've really got to take into account, what's it going to cost me to drive this car? And a lot of people don't do that.
Right.
Don't think about that, rationalize it. I've been there, done that.
And I will say this to all the young people out there, because this is what I raised my kids telling them, is look, oh, you want a Corvette? Oh, that's a nice car. Can you afford the payments? Barely, you say? Wow. Then maybe you ought to get it. Of course, now, keep in mind, having a Corvette in the driveway and just making enough money to make the payments isn't going to get you anywhere because you still have to put insurance on that car, and you have to buy gas for that car, and you have to maintain that car, and you've got to do all the oil changes and everything that goes with driving that car. So can you really afford that car? Yeah, I guess if you put it like that, Dad, maybe not. So think about that in the same respect with an EV is do your research, find out the added costs down the line that you're going to be confronted with, and then decide whether you really can afford that or even want it that bad.
Yeah, and we've always talked about this. If you're going to buy an EV and enjoy it for what it brings to the table, today is not a bad time period to do that, just because of all the incentives to buy one, and there's really not a bad situation with getting your car charged up when you're not at home. These stations are still going in different places. But it does definitely pay to have a good idea of what you're getting yourself into as far as cost goes. And you said, we were talking about this, and this is nothing that I've got knowledge of, nor Tony Josie's heard this rumor, but that they're really going to get aggressive potentially on offering incentives to buy these cars.
The idea that I've heard is that the present administration wants to be 2/3 plug-in vehicles by 2038. Now, that may change, especially if the administration changes.
2028 or 2038?
38.
Oh, okay.
They want to be 2/3 electric versus industrial gas engines.
Do you think that's doable?
No, I don't think it's even close to doable.
How long do you have to go out on a timeline? Do you think it will take 2/3, maybe a half? But I don't know. That's pretty.
I don't think it'll ever even reach half ever. And when I say ever, I don't think it's going to ever meet halfway because I cannot see the. Well, for one thing, I mean, it sounds like a broken record, but the infrastructure alone is not going to support it. How long is that going to take to get up and running? Right. I mean, our infrastructure dates back to the 50s. This is 2024. So how, given those present statistics, how long is it going to take the EV that you need to pull in like every gas station and plug in and charge up? How long before the infrastructure alone is going to be able to handle that? I mean, California alone, we all know last year, demanded everybody not charge. They're all about EVs and going electric and going green. And then they had this brownout and they were conserving electricity, telling people, please don't plug your cars in. And so I don't understand who is behind the design of this evolution into, let's say, 2/3 EVs by 2038. I mean, who thinks that's possible, and who is the guy that is designing this and thinks this is going to happen? I just don't know.
So on the other option, and you've talked about this. Hang on just a second here. It's very professional to have your cell phone sitting here ringing. Okay, got that taken care of. What? Well, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Well, we were talking about meeting a deadline by 2038.
Okay, so the other option is the administration who's over in the White House at the time coming out and saying, okay, we want you to raise to these standards, which creates a more expensive car, right?
Oh, certainly.
So this catch-20. You can't win or lose.
I want to point out something that along with the 2/3 EV versus gasoline, I want to point out that they're also, when I say they, I mean the EPA. That's the regulating department that's coming out with these stringent standards. They're actually demanding unrealistic standards of the internal combustion engine. So it's kind of like they're forcing you into the EV market, which right there I don't like. I don't like to be pushed
with
into something.
just more expensive vehicles,
No,
right? Or not?
not more. Well, they are going to be more expensive because they're upping the mileage, the CAFE standards to unrealistic levels, and the not only that, but also the pollution standards coming out of the tailpipe for an internal combustion engine are. I can't remember the stats, but when I saw them, I just put it right out of my mind. I go, that's never going to be possible by that deadline. It's just unrealistic demands of the auto manufacturers. So it's kind of like to me, it's kind of like a forced situation, and I don't like anybody telling me I got to do something like that, only because
Right.
it's not, I mean, I don't care if I drive an EV. I guess I would. I wouldn't like it, but I don't think it's good for anybody to be forced into that situation. I think you should let the market bear out reality, and that is if you want an EV, they will sell. If you want an internal combustion engine, then they will sell. And just let the market play it, you know.
So with these higher standards and the increasing cost, what does that end up doing to the car? Does car drive normal like a car you'd buy prior to the higher standards? You know what I'm saying?
You mean the internal combustion
Yeah,
engine?
right,
Yeah,
right.
no, it won't change anything drivability-wise. It will. The manufacturers are the ones that are going to have to deal with the unrealistic probabilities that this is not going to be reachable by the dates that are preset at this point. But it won't make the car run any different. But keep in mind, every time the EPA demands higher mileage and pollution standards, the cost goes up. Because when you have to research and develop different ways of manufacturing automobiles, it doesn't come cheap. So the cost for that research and development is going to be passed along into the price of the vehicle to the consumer. So you got to be careful of wishing for the wrong thing. I mean, I know the people that want an EV, I think their heart is in the right place because it doesn't pollute, so they think. But in reality, if they really did their research, they would find out that the EV is not as clean and green as anybody thinks it is.
So this Michelin research shows that tire selection can impact an EV's range by 10 to 15%. Is there, I mean, with what's out there today, could a consumer actually go in and say, yeah, this tire is better for an electric vehicle than this tire is? And then maybe you pay more for it. I don't know.
Yeah, certainly. There is different levels of quality for the tires, but you know, 10 to 15%, if you've got an EV, you're not driving it across country in most cases. You know, you're not going to see a great deal of benefit from 10 to 15%. One of the things that I would say about the tire manufacturers is that they know this is an ongoing problem, and I'm sure they're working on it. Will they achieve it? I'm sure they will. But I want to reiterate, how long will that be, and how much will the tires cost when they finally reach their goal of quiet, dependable, long-term, all the specifications that they want for these tires? Well, how much is the price going to be on those tires now? Because a lot of planning and research is going to have to go into that, too.
You know what's interesting, when you look at all the tire brands that are out there, and you've got some I think, just correct me if I'm wrong on this, you have a major company that has literally producing tires under a different name, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, what do you look for if you're? I mean, you maybe you don't want to go with the cheapest tire, but you definitely don't want to go. And is the best tire in the category really the best tire in the category?
All right.
To warrant the money.
Well, I would say this to most people listening to our program right now that are not really in depth with tire education and worry about what we say about anything, because I want you to know that the Department of Transportation does not allow a cheap tire that's going to blow out. I mean, can tires be defective? Certainly, Bob. You can always have a defective manufacturing process where some tires were defective, and we've seen that in the past. But for the most part, any tire that you can buy is not going to be unsafe. It's not going to be a bad tire in any way. It has to meet certain specifications or they won't allow it to be sold. However, longevity versus noise, and I just want to point out something, Bob. Even on an expensive Cadillac where you want a nice quiet ride, and I've seen this myself, when you buy really, really high dollar tires for it, and, with all the belts and everything inside the tire, even those people have problems with tire noise because they bought these really expensive tires thinking, why, they should be quiet. No, that's not really the case. In most cases, they're not that quiet. So you have to deal with that road noise. You can't have it both ways. It's either you want them quiet or you want them built very well. One comes with a noise problem.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the noise problem you get used to. It's not so much a problem, you just get used to it.
Well,
you have the radio on. And
it's disappointing at first when you just spent, all this money for a set of tires and you've got this nice car and you drive it down the road and it's not anywhere near as quiet as it was before you brought it into the tire store. And it's disappointing, but it's explainable. It is something that you have to live with and you get used to it. So it's not the end of the world. But knowing you have good tires is sometimes, in most cases, a lot more beneficial.
take a little noise.
Knowing you've got,
right.
your kids and everybody are safe in the car. That can be, you can get used to the noise, and sometimes you just have to. There's not much you can do.
Yeah, so we have about a minute and a half left. Some of the most important things you can do is rotate those tires and watch your alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be your best shot at getting the most out of those tires.
Right, and the reason you want to rotate the tires is because the front tires not only turn every time the back tires turn, they also steer at different angles. So you're going to get more wear on the front tires on any car. So what you want to do is get the tires that are wearing out faster in the back on a nice straight axle again, and then you will find that you will have less wear on all four tires, and then at the time you need tires, you're going to need all four tires. Well, that's a pretty big, nut to bite at that point, but it's better than doing two front tires and then two rear tires and two front tires. I mean, math has proven that out over and over, and we've done it on the air to prove that point. You're better off wearing all four tires out equally and then buying all four brand new tires.
Interesting. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, we did that one time. We proved it out. We can do it again if you want. But buying two fronts and then a year later, two rears and back and forth, you spend more money that way.
This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.